Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Moving Forward, or tonight. I am in no mood for being gracious, as we have now gone past our holy days, and now it is back to business. My fellow listeners, I see that ignorance seems to be the only way, as one or two in the United Records of the Poor think that they can hit at me. Their ignorant statements made by one of their supporters in the comment section showed me quite clearly that the truth is too much for them to bear, to handle, and to hear. I tell them this, that the good Lord is with me and in me. My message to these nincompoops is that Alan cannot win another election in St. Lucia. And by the way, I say to these idiots that sticks and stones will break my bones, but names certainly will not hurt me, because I am blessed with knowledge and experience that they will never acquire. They should read the Bible more often to learn a little bit about life. Now, back to the real issues of the time. I say to you, the listeners, that we must now be awake because of the poison ignorance that now prevails in this beautiful country, because of the United Records of the Poor. I tell you this, brothers and sisters, we must rediscover who we are and what life was all about until Alan came to the political scene. The destruction of that party, which was called the United Workers' Party, is without a doubt exceedingly serious since Alan took over. Their blatant perversions of the party's principle, laid down by Sir John Compton, founder of that party, is simply unacceptable. We can see clearly that some who believe in Sir John are now becoming nostalgic for the past, despite the damning revelations we are seeing that is gradually eroding that party. Alan wiped out all that was sacred about what Sir John left behind, even to the insults we have seen of Sir John's children. Alan, together with his cronies and poodles, has wiped out all that was sacred. When one looks at Philip compared to the opposition leader, the difference is clear and concise, because Philip is showing quality leadership, namely greater tolerance, greater loyalty, and greater kindness, more so to the poor of the party and country. Alan shows that he did not tolerate collegiality in his leadership and in work. He acted not through persuasion, but by imposing his concepts and demanding absolute submission to his opinion, because I am the one looking like the white massa. That was his thinking. Once again, I'm not here to do the government's PR, because they have their people to do so, regardless what we think of them. We all have our opinions as to the job they are doing. I just hope personally that they will improve through experience. However, for me, I'm here to speak as objectively as I can be, because truth should be forever on the throne. The deviousness that seems to have become the way of life for some cannot resonate in me and others, because we believe sincerely that honesty is always the best policy. It is at this juncture I want to say a prayer, so that God will give me the strength to say what I have to say tonight with a passion that has been embedded in my sinews for the past week. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O Father in heaven, you sent Philip Joseph Pierre when we needed a leader that will lead us on to the promised land. We are grateful to you, O Father, because he's truly the leader that this country needed, without a doubt. He is a thinking leader who cares for the people, all the people, and not those who are labor or voted for labor, but all the people. We thank you, Father, because you knew what was best for the country after what we had and the direction the country was going. The leader then had even got into a form of obeah in order to poison people's mind. But I have learned a long time ago that evil triumphant is somehow weaker than right defeated. We have defeated the evil that was beginning to lift its head in this beautiful island of ours. Father, I put my faith and trust in you because you are without a doubt the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Amen, amen. Tonight I quote from the Bible, Psalm 138 verses 1 to 8. I thank you, Lord, with all my heart. I sing praise to you before the gods. I face your holy temple. I bow down and praise your name because of your constant love and faithfulness, because you have shown that your name and your commands are supreme. You've answered me when I called to you. With your strength, you have strengthened me. All the kings in the world will praise you, Lord, because they have heard your promises. They will sing about what you have done and about your great glory, even though you are so high above. You care for the lowly, and the proud cannot hide from you. When I'm surrounded by troubles, you keep me safe. You oppose my angry enemies and save me by your power. You'll do everything you have promised, Lord. Your love is eternal. Complete the work that you have begun. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Oh, tonight, it is a night to be joyful because last Sunday we celebrated the resurrection, and therefore we should have been in a relaxed mood. But alas, it is not so, because so much has been happening in our country which needs to be brought to the fore. I'm at wit's end, trying to understand the mischievousness of the United Records of the Poor. Not only that, but the poor and abysmal leader they have had. It is clear that some of his foot soldiers, who, when in power, seem to be running their own little kingdom instead of the country we call the Helen of the West. It seems that at the higher echelon of the party, it was all about themselves and their little cliques. When the next leader of that party made it clear that he fails to recognize that party to the one he led, and went on to say quite emphatically, "C'est pas flambeau," it sends a clear message that chills the spine. In other words, this was certainly not the party he knew and who stood for truth, honesty, and decency. What we seem to be witnessing is that Alan and his merry men and women, who seem to be a bunch of nincompoops, are trying their best to ridicule Philip and the government. However, to their amazement and sheer ignorance, what the country is seeing is different to them. Why? Because they are blind and cannot see. And therefore, they need the good Lord to come and open their eyes so that they can see the light instead of the darkness that they knew. At present, it is the Prime Minister Philip Joseph Pierre who is bringing some light into the darkness that hovered around us for 5 long years, which is now resulting in the country moving forward on nearly every front. When I heard the Prime Minister in the House giving an overview of the primary surplus, I was literally on air to hear what proper fiscal management of the country's finances was becoming a reality. The Prime Minister made it clear that these surpluses are not to be interpreted as the government having extra cash. Instead, it is the result of prudent fiscal management of the country's finances, which allowed it to be more than to meet its current expenditure, leaving excess revenue to cover, in part, the country's debt obligations in interest payments and principal payments. What heightened my exuberance was when he said, "Mr. Speaker, had we not been able to do so, the government would have had to borrow to meet some of its recurrent expenditures, like salaries and wages, rents, utilities, and the like. We have responsibly guided this scenario and will continue to avoid it with prudent fiscal management of the government's finances." This clearly brought home to me that bad management of the country by the last government, when its leader told the country that the government was broke, or the country did not have any money. The Prime Minister went on, Mr. Speaker, the primary surplus balance indicates that the country is developing the capacity to reduce the level of debt over time. A deficit on the primary account would have indicated that revenue and grants would be inadequate to pay the interest on debt. As a result, no contribution would have been made towards any reductions in the debt expenses. The coup de grace was when he went on to say, Mr. Speaker, I hope that this explanation has debunked the idea by some who may wish to mislead the public that government has generated more cash than it needs, notwithstanding these current account surpluses. The government will experience an overall deficit in 23-24 of 111 million, or 65 million less than last year, indicating a lowering of the deficit gap. I look forward to the day when our revenue and grants will be sufficient to cover both current and capital expenditure, leaving us with an overall surplus. That was good to hear. The uppercut, though, was to come when the Prime Minister emphasized with some passion, Mr. Speaker, if this country is kept in the hands of responsible men and women to administer, as in the case now, it may one day get there. I believe what was expounded by the Prime Minister was certainly excellent news, and I'm sure that was not the news the United Records of the Poor wanted to hear. The economy at that rate can only get better. What we must plan for is putting things in place for the hurricane season that is upon us. When I look at the opposition, there is not one of them I can say that I would ever support in the leadership of this country. Why? Because they have not the wit nor the brains that it takes to lead a country. They have big measures. When they were in power, certainly sunk this island to the bottom of the Caribbean Sea. They were simply useless and hopeless, and without a doubt, I would say entirely clueless. Having said that, and being as honest as I can be, there are those in the government and ministries who are also devious or have grown too big for their boots and shoes because they seem to be festering their own nest instead of looking to the development of the country. I simply pull no punches. They seem not prepared to speak in a balanced manner and in an objective manner. Their promises are never kept, some of them. I repeat to these people once again that honesty is the best policy. Therefore, I say without a doubt, that is where Philip stands, head and shoulders above the individuals in both parties. He's focused because he has come to the realization that when an individual is no longer a true participant in society, as we were seeing in 216 to 221, when he or she no longer feels a sense of responsibility to his or her society, the content of that democracy is emptied. Therefore, it is important to inculcate into minds that when culture is degraded, as we have seen in the United Records of the Poor, because vulgarity seemed to be enthroned in them somewhat, and because they failed to respect the social system just like their leader, then what we will see and have seen under their administration was that our culture was degraded and vulgarity became enthroned. We have not got to look too far to see it in their comments. This was clearly visible when an individual at the top of the political ladder can call his supporters mendicants, jackasses, and barking dogs, more so when he truly showed himself to be the mendicant in the house. I'll take my first break and I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about mendicants and jackasses and barking dogs. But I now want to say that what was even clearer recently in the House. Why? Because the leader of the opposition could not remember the difference in a speech made by the Prime Minister 1 year ago to one that he was now making. Instead, the leader of the opposition made a proper ass out of himself in the House. At least I said to one of his supporters, that would not happen to me because I am well educated and as one would call me or have called me an academic. Therefore, when we have people like Alan and those who follow him and who write comments, then without a doubt, they induce peril, which inexorably induces people to pull away from them and a soulless society. That is why I believe sincerely that we now have a Prime Minister that is as honest as he can be and is without a doubt humble, righteous, and empathetic individual. He has an abundance of integrity and is an individual who truly cares about the country and its people. He certainly has displayed leadership qualities, and because of that, he has an overwhelming bunch of followers who believe in him, and not party per se, because even well-known United Workers' Party followers during Sir John's time will not vote for Alan and his band of merry men. Since we came into our post-colonial state world of 40-odd years ago, we seem not to understand that we have an imported system of government borrowed from Europe, and therefore we will never succeed with a colonial-style government. Why? Because it is important to come to the realization that we now have neo-colonialism, which is leading or feeding off the colonial system that was left behind by our old colonizers. What we fail to realize is that new wounds are appearing because we have kept the colonial system, and it is in a way strangling us. It is not what some had the guts to say, in that it had a conscience. My brothers and sisters, you all now know that it had no conscience. The colonizers still dominate and are causing havoc in many of the countries they occupied. Let us go and ask the Haitians and a few other countries of the world, more so in Africa. Without a doubt, there is a large stage or state of imperialism that still exists. They pretended to have left, but never left. We must never forget that, because it is clear as daylight. We must now put things that hold us together. We must be conscious of the need to do the right thing in our lives. That is why the Caribbean countries must come together and work together, because in my view, the freedom of St. Lucia means nothing if the whole of the Caribbean does not see it that way. However, I do insist that we must not judge ourselves too harshly, because we will judge on the basis of our colonial masters, even though to an extent that we are not really independent, because we are still subdued. Therefore, we have to know our potential. Even as a small country, we must have pride in ourselves. The neo-colonialist is alive and well. We must never forget this. That is why the last Prime Minister believed so much in the Cambridge Analytica, who, in theory, many developed countries realize their destabilization effect on the countries in many parts of the world. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, their fight to stay alive was without a doubt a con trick, and it once worked. Now they are trying other tricks to make us think that Alan is like the little man on the street and that he cares. This seems to be pie in the sky as far as I am concerned. No wonder he was close to tears when he made the statement of the holiness of the house. The time is now for us to ask fundamental questions from Alan. However, we need the right answers from this reprobate. Why does he still want to lead this country when he failed the country so miserably? Why does he lie the way he does? Why did he come to the House unprepared, more so accusing the Prime Minister of saying something he never said? Why is he so anxious to leave the House when some of the speakers on the government side are going to speak? And I want to ask him sincerely, where is our $7.4 million he paid for vaccines we've never received? Where is the lockbox in which the $1.50 levy on gas was being placed into? We must know and see progress if we are to survive. And we are seeing this under Philip Joseph Pierre, without a doubt. Listeners are moving forward. We cannot live in a divide and rule country, because that is what Alan wants. He wants to see a divided country so that he can use this by his continued foraging of false information and the lies that he peddles. Therefore, the time is now, and it's ripe, when we have to show the opposition and its leaders that we are moving on to greater things, in that with Philip Joseph Pierre at its helm. The country, without a doubt, is moving forward by leaps and bounds. So I say to the United Records of the Poor that they must start digging so as to find a place to hide, because they are being made to look like the jackasses their leader continues to call them. Alan is always looking for conflict, so that the government he has embedded in his shallow mind will feel uncomfortable. We must deal with the basic things, in that we must solve conflict, ladies and gentlemen. That is now endemic because of the last government's running of the country. Therefore, we must resolve the conflict. And by doing so, St. Lucia can rise. If we come together, we must fight for our survival, and must do so by respecting one another. We must embed in our minds that we are doing so for this generation and generations to be born, not even to come, to be born. Therefore, beyond the rhetoric, what to do? There is no doubt about it. There must be a consciousness, and we must be passionate as to what we can do. The fundamentals are there if we want to succeed. However, it needs for us to work together, something which the reprobates like Alan and his poodles cannot internalize. Their sole aim and purpose is to do everything in their power to divide and rule. In Ireland, there is no doubt that the country in 216 to 221 had a terrible leadership problem. However, that problem was also his followership. I therefore say that without a doubt, it is service to humanity in what we must look for right now. We are capable of rising because of the inner strength that the majority of the country's men and women have, and because they have their sons and daughters and those to come to think about. What many in this country expected is that Philip to be a thief, because that is what is thought of all politicians. But when this does not emanate in the individual, then they are lost, because if you thought so, then you are not wise. I therefore say to the powers that be that we must improve our politics, more so in agriculture, health, and to improve our education system, more so the quality of our environment. We must put into place laws that will enable our citizens to think highly of the environment, more so when we are talking about global warming and climate change. The effects of not being prepared or knowledgeable can be catastrophic to the country and to us. If we are to hit, it can be, if, say, for example, we're hit by a hurricane, it can be done. But what is now important is that we must take a solemn vow to push by government in order to unite, in order to solve problems that may come to the fore. Therefore, I say to the supporters of Philip Joseph Pierre that the time is now ripe for us to wear the crown without the jewels. We must never commit the sin of giving up or giving him what has to be done, because if we do so, the jewels will come. The time now is the crown without the jewels. Never commit the sin of despair. We have a role to play in making St. Lucia great under the leadership of Philip Joseph Pierre. On another front, the Trinidad Prime Minister said quite categorically, when he spoke about a guest speaker who went to Trinidad to speak on behalf of the opposition as elections draws near in that country, he made it clear that the guest speaker was a loser. Yet the opposition asked him to come and speak to them about crime. Well, he said, that move in itself is a crime in itself. Yes, Prime Minister, I suppose you are 200%. That's the Prime Minister of Trinidad. What made me laugh until the cows came home was that he was speaking about Alan Chastain, who had the audacity to make the same speech in St. Lucia, in Trinidad, about why crime is rising. And he blames young women at 18 who had 1, 2, and 3 children, just like their mothers before them and their mothers before. That is to say, I say to the women of St. Lucia, that is the disrespect that Alan have for you. I therefore ask those who voted for him, these are the ladies, and his poodles, how could you give a vote to this party after what he said in this insulting manner? Crime has nothing to do with young women or women on the whole. Alan should have gone and read some books on crime or do some psychological research, and he would find out that some of the things he did while he was Prime Minister of this country was the cause for the levels of crime to increase to what we are now seeing. The last government simply failed to hear the deep rumbling of discontent that was springing up all over the country when he was Prime Minister, because he simply did not care. However, without a doubt, we are seeing it today. And this government is making every effort to put things in place to deal with the situation. There was, without a doubt, a thunder of the disinherited masses rising from the dungeons of oppression. You could hear it in Marchand, Vieux Fort, Dennery, Castries, Southeast, and in other nooks and crannies of the country. Those who were disillusioned began making it clear that they are not gonna let nobody turn them around because they had suffered enough. The great mass of young men were determined to end the exploitation of the government then because they felt that they were the targets. They suddenly became awake and began to move towards their goal by using crime as their ally. In many parts of the country, it was like a tidal wave, and even the police could not come to help to an extent. You could hear the cries of many rumbling in some of these village streets, even in some houses and elsewhere on the roadside. What the last government failed to understand is that these developments, if they had looked elsewhere, would have realized that if they had studied history, they would have come to the realization the reasons for the upsurge of crime. These young men of the country were yearning for jobs, employment, which would have given them the freedom they seek. Therefore, crime at all levels emanated because of poor levels of governmental leadership then. I therefore say to you, my listeners, and hope that the present government listens also, and that is, no human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Even a superficial look at history reveals that no social advance rolls on the wheels of inevitability. And it's at this juncture I will take my next break, and I'll be back because it's getting important. Welcome back to Moving Forward. I was talking about social advancement, and I want to say quite categorically that every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the 3 S's. I mentioned that last week because the past government failed to understand that, and therefore I don't want the present government to fall into the same trap without persistent effort. They must know that time itself becomes an ally of the insurgent, and primitive forces of irrational emotionalism and social destruction. Therefore, there is no time for apathy or complacency. My good friends, this is a time for vigorous and positive actions. And that is what the present budget brings to the people of the island we call the Helen of the West. Having outlined the above, we should now go back to the miracle budget, which had the people of St. Lucia stunned, even those who supported the United Records of the Poor. It seems like a shock to their system when the Prime Minister spoke about the prudent and fiscal management that had taken place over the fiscal year, and which had brought the country back out of the darkness and into the light of economic security. What was great to hear was that government, through positive and prudent stewardship of the economy, was able to cover the country's debt obligation. What this simply meant is that the government did not have to borrow to keep the country afloat. Because of its prudent fiscal management, which will reduce its level of debt over time. The Prime Minister said that the aim and objectives of government is to transform the economy of St. Lucia through infrastructural and development, physical, social, and digital investment. These are the areas that the government in the upcoming year plans to focus on. He made it clear that road expansion and repair programs will be island-wide. He went on to express that there will be school plant rehabilitation, also government plan refurbishments. We will see the construction works at St. Jude Hospital, the commencement of works on the Soufriere Hospital, the establishment of the Castries Urban Polyclinic, the rehabilitation of sporting facilities, the completion of works at the Larissus Wellness Center, and the construction of the National Aquatic Center and the housing development in Roseau, Casabah, and Chalk. I'm sure that this is music to the majority of St. Lucians' ears. Therefore, jobs will be created, and the economy will be in a healthy position, Prime Minister, in my view. When all this has become a reality and the economy is finally put on track and is blossoming, I would without a doubt go into an election immediately to leave the opposition in a daze and try to get a 17-0 result. Ladies and gentlemen, looking back of the sitting of the House in 2024 to 2025 budget, what really made me get into a daze is that the leader of the opposition showed that, without a doubt, that he was classless, a basic ignoramus, and without a doubt an nincompoop. Here he was standing up to oppose what the Prime Minister had said. And he was quoting something that the Prime Minister had never said. So much so, the Humpty Dumpty, or what he was lately called Johnny Walker, was bringing up something from 22-23 budget. Honestly, I felt embarrassed and could not believe that this guy, without a doubt, I'm sure, had lived with Trump all his life. They are simply no different. He is without a doubt, in my view, the classical jackass. The audience, both inside the House and outside, was befuddled, dumbfounded, and somewhat taken aback because they were in a daze by the antics of the leader of the opposition. I almost felt as though I was watching a comedy show as he perused his papers. And when he found, and that he said, there it is, he thought he had found it. He was totally wrong. Oh, how in heaven's name do we have people like that representing us? And we have this brainless supporter calling people old. The leader of the opposition was a classical case of something whose brains had deteriorated so badly that he should not be representing anyone in this country. Again, I say without a doubt, he is another Trump, but at least Trump is 78. It was without a doubt an embarrassment to us all. However, the worst of this inefficiency was the fact that other countries were watching and sitting. More so, leaders of other countries who were concentrating, doing business with St. Lucia. Not only that, but what did diplomatic friends think of us, knowing that we had this guy as a prime minister then? Nothing surprises me with that character when he seems to want to play on the public sympathy by sitting at the back of a van as though he was a piece of trash being taken away to the dustbin of history. Maybe he thought that that is where he belongs. That is okay by me. He has a right to do so. However, what I was more concerned about was the security man who had to endure the stupidity and callous attitude by someone whom he was protecting. Therefore, my only sympathy was for him. It was, and I believe that he was so embarrassed that he put his life on the line by sitting on the edge of the van. This leader of the opposition should never be in our politics. And as I have said many times before to him, he should without a doubt go back to the country that he said he was a product of, because I would certainly be saying good riddance to him then. Ladies and gentlemen of this country, many have sat and watched the charade of the destruction of the custody suite. But not only that, the dismantling and demolishing of an old prison and the police buildings that accommodated the police band, etc. This demolition was done in a manner that left every St. Lucian looking for the reason why it had to be done then, and what would replace those buildings. Not only that, but where would the individuals who use these buildings would be accommodated? The traffic people, as we know, are now housed in accommodation owned by the leader of the opposition's father. Could that be right? And not only that, but allegedly elsewhere. What is clear as daylight is that the rent for these buildings are not cheap, and therefore it seems as if that is all this individual had in mind. He was not thinking of the country as a whole, but what got up my nose is that it was alleged that his father was there as a foreman in the demolition of these buildings. Very soon, some ministries will be moving up north in the new renovated building. Is it true, as has been alleged, that he has a hand in that? This is something the present government should look into thoroughly in terms of allegedly backhanders. St. Lucians, I'm appalled that no one stood up to the then government to make it clear that what they were doing was totally wrong. The only person who seemed to have any guts in standing up to Allen and his government and his band of merry men was no other than Christopher Hunt, whom they then made a target, more so during COVID-19. I do believe that the so-called special prosecutor should get off his ass and begin to do something positive in showing the public that they are putting measures in place to take action. These people cannot just sit there and earn money without working for it. Or those who may have committed crimes, thinking that nothing will be done because they are what one would term membet, epi mempuel. Yes, I've seen this time and time again in the public service, and I believe that it is time laws are passed to stop this nonsense when one thinks of the hard work that other people are doing, to the extent that they are duly stressed under their jobs at big supermarkets, chicken places, small supermarkets, etc. It simply cannot be right that these people work their backsides out while others do very little, and yet they are the first to complain. I therefore said to the government, let us see the laws for the living wage and other areas of help for workers who work their guts out come to the fore. I believe that a good government must function in a manner that takes on everything that is wrong in our society. We need investors, but not those who come here and take our people for granted. That to me is a form of slavery and colonialism with a little pay to say that we are democratic. That does not wash and should be called hogwash in my language. We have a labor department that is simply useless. I say this because I know quite a bit about labor relations, not being pig-headed or big-headed, because part of my social science degree is in industrial relations. I also have a diploma in labor studies and industrial relations. And not only that, I have taught the subject at all levels in the United Kingdom. I'm also a High Court mediator with a master's in mediation from London University. So I'm not speaking as one who does not have the qualification or have not been involved in industrial relations at all at a very high level. I'm simply fed up with the sort of camouflage that takes place in this country and people with no real experience in certain areas of work because they have pieces of paper in high positions. Experience counts. So when people talk about age or old, it is without a doubt the individual is whether the individual can do the job. That is why countries like Canada, England, France, and Scandinavia look to those older folks with experience and wisdom. I also now want to point out to the government that the issues dealing with the country's Speaker of the House after the budget should be number one on their list because it is essential to deal with it. The government thought that they had, but there was a little issue that should have been dealt with and that should have been done by now. Or tonight, I feel empowered to speak my mind and bring the facts forward in a conscious manner. As always, I'm not afraid of saying it as it is because St. Lucia comes first and not Tom, Dick, or Harry or Dennis Springer. I don't intend ever to kiss anyone's backside. Truth must always be on the throne. We can be a great little island, but the nonsensical claptrap that is accepted in this country because we don't want to hurt feelings or you are not part of a certain group is bullshit. What is wrong is wrong. And having celebrated Easter, the 10 Commandments is clear and concise. and cannot be interpreted in no other way than it was given to Moses. Tonight, I want to say something that I'm sure that Alan and his band of merry men and women truly will have to think about. When he became Prime Minister in 2016 to 2021, I'm sure he thought that he wore a kingly crown. And in his grasp, a scepter shone on his brow. There was a mark that his jackasses and barking dogs and poodles say. And what they say is that, and it says is that, I am God and King and the law. Did not this friend Trump said he is almost on the same level with the one Most High? Ladies and gentlemen, did not Alan think that he owned the police fraternity, that everything was his? Did he not tell the opposition that they had no right to advise the government because they lost the right to do so in 2016? Did he not come up with warped ideas that had nothing to do with the Constitution or the country, even during COVID-19? Did he not try to bring the sports of kings into St. Lucia because that is the circle he wanted to be in? Ladies and gentlemen, I speak this way tonight because of the stupidity that this individual and his band of merry men are still out there spilling out. This, in my view, are insults to the people of this land, one way or the other, because their brains are completely shallow with bull. It's at this juncture I'll take my next break, and I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. Well, I tell the supporters of the United Records of the Poor, and I say that to you, my friends, tonight. I feel enlightened and also feel extra special when I have to deal with the barking dogs they are and have been portrayed. They like to insult Labour ministers or anyone who supports the Labour government or unity government. They are, without a doubt, a lost cause. And bit by bit, they are being withered away and will be out of government for a very long time. That is simply what they cannot stomach. After July 2021, when one had to hear those barking dogs, which included the leader, as to how vociferous they were, you would swear blind that they left the country's economy in a condition that was healthy. That was sheer poppycock, because the economy was in a terrible mess when they were kicked out. However, they wanted to convince their mendicants, their barking dogs and jackasses otherwise. What they did not realize was that they were fooling no one but themselves, because they lived in cloud cuckoo land, because they were of that ilk. They were kicked out of office unceremoniously because of the shambles they left behind and the mismanagement of the country throughout the years that they were in office. Now the country is back on track and prosperity lies ahead. When I look at the budget, I can see now where this country is heading. And I feel satisfied and overjoyed, because I now know that if Philip stays in office for the next 10 or 15 years, then my 10 and 12-year-olds have a bright future ahead of them. God is definitely good, because they are intelligent children. When I look back in the Bible, something registered in my mind when Jesus said to his followers that I am the good shepherd. More so when he gave sight to an older man who was born blind. And it was a miracle that became known all over. Well, we hope that Philip will be the good shepherd, because he has the population of this country in his hand and therefore needs the master's help. However, he is a genuine believer, and therefore he will get the help he needs as long as he continues to believe. Therefore, I say to each and every one of you, if we want to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must learn to humble ourselves. That is why I use Psalm 138 tonight. I do hope that you say this to the One Most High when you wake up in the morning. What we have seen with Philip Joseph Pierre, compared to what we had before, is that he has shown us clearly that actions speak louder than words in what he has accomplished in a quiet manner. What the leader failed to come to grips with is that's the opposition leader, is that Philip has overcome the mayhem he left behind. He was always trying to ridicule Philip, but he never really served the people of this country. Philip Joseph Pierre is doing so without fanfare. This Prime Minister is bringing results to the country, slowly but surely, on nearly all fronts. Oh, there is so much more that I would like to say tonight, but time does not permit. I do hope and pray that this program will be sent all around, because it has unraveled somewhat the goodness of the budget that the Prime Minister has given to the people of St. Lucia. Before I end, let me say something, especially to the people of Ancillary and Canaries, in their representative. You have a damn good man, a pious and humble man. Many of you may not have realized that. He is virtually the right-hand man of the Prime Minister, whom he has helped tremendously in the few years he has been with him to bring out a budget that is simply divine. Therefore, I say to you in his constituency to be patient, because he's putting together a lot for the community. Is without a doubt working while some are sleeping. Ladies and gentlemen, as I end, I want and I hope that tonight I have given you evidence of the great morale and political strength of the unity government. I'm absolutely certain that the government, armed with people like the Prime Minister and others, like the representative for Ancillary and Canaries, will lead St. Lucian people along the successes and to the new victories. Therefore, long live this unity government. As I conclude tonight, I want to enlighten many of you why I have made every effort to speak out. And it does not matter which government is in power, because it is the country that matters to me and what is best for it. In the past, I strongly felt paralyzed to say what needs to be said. I know that I should say something or do something, draw conclusions, yet then I felt that words would be false, inadequate, inept, or deficient. I thought then only to stand in silence and in comprehension. I knew then that I must not remain silent, yet I was still utterly speechless. There was certainly a state of paralysis, because it was deep and maybe, just maybe, a feeling of shame. I then felt that it is my disgrace not to speak out. Therefore, as a human being, I feel responsible for humanity, more so of my country. And as such, I cease to understand myself, for I too am human, and the idea of silence has to be overcome. So today I speak my mind for the better of St. Lucia and mankind, whether I'm young or old. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I once again come to the end, as always. I have tried to be honest, because to be honest is to confront the truth, no matter what I do, how I do it, so that generations to come can have a decent life, which means good health, education, jobs, etc. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we must work unceasingly to lift this country that we so love to a higher destiny, to a new plateau of compassion, to a more noble expression of humaneness. Our Prime Minister has given us a budget that we should be proud of. I hope and pray that you will all see the benefits of that budget. Brothers and sisters, I want you to go in peace and try to digest what this humble Prime Minister has put together for us. I want to always remind you that you were born in God's image and likeness, and therefore we were born black and should be proud of that. Therefore, go in peace to serve the One Most High. And I say to you, in all sincerity, good night and blessed love to you all. So good night and good night.